yo, what up, friends?
Then the Major League Baseball decided that they would finally and legitimately incorporate Negro League statistics into their own, which now has brought on a lot of new league leaders, and as well has brought a lot of Hall of Famers who have been Hall of Famers, but may have not had the notoriety from before, are now able to get that notoriety because their statistics are now official within the Major League Baseball lexicon. So, what happened? Well, it's been 3 years. So back in 2020, the Major League Baseball decided that they wanted to incorporate the Negro League statistics into their own Major League statistics. They found that through surveying former players, through obviously doing research and looking into game capsules, box scores, things of that nature, not to mention the fact that a lot of these players that were segregated racially from being allowed to play in the major leagues, not through any fault of their own other than the color of their skin, but not being allowed to play was not only disenfranchising to them, right? Not only hurtful and denigrating and all the other sorts of things that come with racial segregation or any types of segregation, but a lot of them were just as good, if not better, players than the Caucasian players that were actually allowed to play in the major leagues. And this was seen through barnstorming games. This was seen through unofficial games like the California League, where they actually let integration happen. This was seen when players like Jackie Robinson, Willie Mays, Satchel Paige, who, by the way, pitched in the majors into his 50s and was still better than all the major leaguers. So don't tell me that these players don't deserve to have their statistics incorporated. Now, obviously, Major League did their due diligence. They went back, they checked all the box scores, checked all the news. Now, obviously, there is a lot of incomplete information. You know, there's the 1920s, 1930s we're talking about, newspapers, information, things like that, very sparse. They had to piece it together, which is why it's taken so long. And they don't even have the complete database full. They only have about 50, 60% of the Negro League statistics. But it has made a dent already. It has made an indention. And these talented ball players and legends should be allowed to reap, even though most of them have, posthumously have passed away already. They deserve to be, recognized. And even the great Ted Williams said that the Hall should induct their first Negro League star, Satchel Paige, back in 1971. It would take another 24 years even after that. So the Negro League players dealt with this contention for a very long time, but as we saw, many great players came through. We lost recently the great Willie Mays. Willie Mays is one of those players who was in the Negro Leagues and then came to the major leagues and was better than all of the other players that he played against. Ernie Banks, another one. Hank Aaron, another one. Jackie Robinson. I know I'm only mentioning the greats. There's others. There's Buck Leonard, Turkey Stearns. There's a bunch of I'm trying to think of the one guy in the outfield. He's one of the greatest hitters. And I can't, for some reason, cannot think. I'm slipping on his name right now. But anyways, a bunch of great players that deserve to be recognized. So one of the greatest is Josh Gibson. Josh Gibson was called the Black Babe Ruth. He played catcher, one of the hardest position to play on the diamond, and was still the best hitter on the field. So now that they have incorporated these statistics, Josh Gibson is now the career leader in batting average above Ty Cobb at 372 over Ty Cobb's 367. He also takes over Babe Ruth's lead in offensive percentage of slugging, OPS, 1.177 to 1.164. Now, there are obviously, as on this show, I'm going to give you both sides here. There are obviously people that say these statistics are not legitimate, that these players did not play against the same level of competition. But why was that? And are we even sure that is the case? As I just mentioned, a lot of those players came in and proved themselves to be, if not as good, better. Yeah, not all of them would have been, obviously. If we're doing any kind of regression to the mean, we're going to know that we're going to have some people in the average. It's the bell curve. We all know the bell curve. And then you're going to have your people to the outsides that are going to be, on the upper and lower percentages of our bell curve. The same thing. It's the same thing here. But it doesn't mean that they're not important and that their statistics do not deserve to be included. So, whatever your argument is to why they should not have been included has already been debunked, has already been talked about, has already been debated by MLB itself, who decided after a lot of debate, a lot of research to do this. It's not their fault that they were prevented. It's not their fault that they were racially segregated. Maybe sometimes through jealousy because they were better. We won't ever know because we can't go back to those times, right? I mean, we know, but you can never know what's actually in a person's mind unless you talk to them, and a lot of those people aren't around anymore. But it's something that needed to be done. These Black and Latino players deserve to be recognized. They have been denied entry to MLB. They did whatever they could to try to get in, to try to improve themselves, creating their own leagues even. And again, you can say, and I'll give credence to your argument. I will at least listen to your argument if you want to say those leagues weren't as good as the major leagues. But then you're going to at least admit that we don't know the percentage, but a good majority of those players were as good, if not better. And that if that is the case, using our A squared plus B squared equals C squared, bringing my math into it, because we're going to talk a little math later too, we can see that the outliers are not going to prevent the real people that deserve to be included from being included, because they won't be on those lists anyways. The non-good ones is what I'm talking about. The non-stars. And we see that through the inclusion. We see that through who's actually included in these actual league leaderboards now. And let me correct myself. I just checked the statistic. They're 75% complete with the database. So they still have about 25% more statistics and things to go through. But for now, this is probably what you're going to see. And this is probably what's going to stay. You might see some increases here and there in a few statistics, but it's not going to be anything major. Again, I understand that a lot of people will say that, a lot of these leagues didn't last a long time. A lot of the games were exhibitions. But again, you have to look at the reason why this was. Why were these people segregated from playing in the game? Could it have been that they were better? It was definitely because of the color of their skin. Whatever it was wrong. And whatever it was needed to be rectified. And hats off. Bring my champion Celtics hat back in. My brand new one that I just got. If you're just tuning in, just got it in the mail today. Hats off. Major League Baseball, you did the right thing. Little golf clap for you. Should have been done a long time ago, to be honest. Should have been done a long time ago. Now it's funny because where I wanted to ultimately go with this is that the amount of African American population in baseball has decreased. It's under 10% now. I think last check it was like 8 or 9%. So how do we go about bringing that diversity back up? Obviously, the Latino players have taken over the game. The majority of players in the league are Latino now. Obviously, that's because of the preponderance of countries. There's a bunch of more Latin countries than there are the United States. Granted, there's a lot more people in the United States. but it's a lot harder too. And baseball in the United States is a lot of a how much money do I have kind of game. Can I afford travel leagues? Can I afford a bat, a glove, cleats? A lot of minorities, a lot of inner city community people can't, which makes baseball, which makes golf harder to play and harder to attain for minorities. Not harder to play, harder to attain and harder to gain ground in when they play because of the color of their skin. And so we've seen it now for almost a century now. And we're still seeing it to this day. And if you go listen to my Hank Aaron podcast, which I did the re-release version with the updated remastered audio about a month ago. Check it out at Ball and Buds podcast on Zencaster or on obviously Apple and Spotify. But I talked about it. We're still experiencing racial segregation at this time. And it's even through simple little things like that, like the amount of monetary value it takes to play a sport that can keep people out of it, that change the demographics, that change the psychographics, that change the way that the organization, doesn't have to be a sport, the way that the organization is developed, the way that the organization progresses, the way that the organization improves. And that includes here. You can't tell me that if we didn't have more black baseball players, it wouldn't be a better major league, because that's a lie. There's a lot of good black athletes that are out there that probably want to play baseball that have been prohibited because of that monetary factor or other factors that would have helped make this a better league. That's good. It's probably not ever going to get back to where it was ever, because now again, Latinos are the main in Major League Baseball. It's probably not going to change from here on out. But we definitely need to increase baseball within the inner city, give more chances to more kids. That may be the next Willie Mays. That may be the next Hank Aaron. That may be the next Roberto Clemente. Shout out my Boricua brother. Wepa, wepa, wepa. That's my take. MLB, you finally did it. A little bit late, but, hey, you did it anyways. Keep up with the Dream Series in connection with Andre Dawson. That brings in a lot of inner city players to try to bring that diversity up. Fun fact, the Wichita Monrovians, which is a tremendous name, fantastic, also known as the Wichita Wind Surge now, AA affiliate of the Minnesota Twins. They were originally known as the Black Wanderers, and they were a dominant semi-pro team that debuted in 1922. They posted ads in newspapers all over the country to play any teams that would be willing to take them on. Obviously, most of them all white teams, beating all of them. Most notably and dramatically in 1925, when the Black Wanderers defeated a team mostly comprised of Ku Klux Klan members. How's about that for a don't give me your statistics? Just fucking beautiful. Fucking beautiful. I love it. Oh man. Yeah, a little golf clap, LOL. Facts. Thank you, Clever D. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate that. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, thank you for filling us in on that, Scott. I really appreciate that. Scott Kobe telling us that they may not see any money. That's a lot. That happens a lot of times within these class action lawsuits. If you've ever applied to get money for these, I have in the past. Sometimes you'll see it'll be like, oh, $7.70 or $14.20. So definitely y'all gotta have to look into that. I am hoping that you all get money back. Again, it's probably not going to be as much as what I estimated. That was just an estimate from just the purely mathematical standpoint of data. But I hope y'all do. I really do. Again, I never bought it, so I'm not looking to get any money. I'm just trying to help y'all out for it. Yeah, Ronald, better late than never. Yep, better late than never. I agree. Black players were as good and in a lot of cases better. Like I said, my favorite is that Satchel Paige was pitching into his 50s, and I remember I think one of the stories was, I think he was like 52 years old. He was pitching against the Royals, and he came in, and this was like he was pulled. At this time he had retired. I think he was like pulled off the streets, and he pitched like 6 innings of 1-hit ball, and I'm like, he came off the street as a 50-year-old and still dominated a professional team. You can't tell me. You can't tell me that. Willie Mays, the greatest player ever, hands down. Don't give me Babe Ruth, because Babe Ruth didn't play against most of those players. And when he did, in those barnstorming games, in those exhibition games, he was beat by Josh Gibson and the crew. So don't give me that. Babe Ruth has never been the greatest player of all time, except when he was before, the black players were allowed to play. Thank you, Ronald. I appreciate you tuning in. And yep. And I mean, growing up, right? A lot of people that I grew up in, I have a lot of white friends. My high school was mostly white, but before that, middle school, elementary school, it was a lot more diverse. And so most of my friends, my personal friends I grew up, are black and brown. Again, I have a lot of white friends, but most of my friends are black and brown. And we would know that those were sports that we may not be able to play. Now, granted, I'm not talking about myself. I grew up middle class. Thank God for my parents, my mom, my dad. My dad was in the Army. I was able to play those sports. But there are a lot of people that don't get that chance. I mean, I didn't get to play golf, but I played baseball. Played baseball my whole life. But there's a lot of people that don't get that chance that should. And that's what this is about.